Welcome, Robert Kesten, Executive Director of the Stonewall National Museum Archives. Thank you for being here with me.
It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we have a lot to talk about, and I would love to begin first with a little bit of background about you and your career and how you arrived at the archives.
Well, I have a complicated career. After college, I actually moved to Los Angeles and did 5 feature films and also had a nightclub act in Beverly Hills. And then went and worked in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. And then started a consulting firm, which took me to be part of the breakup of the Soviet Union, working in Kyiv, and then in Egypt and Tunisia during the Arab Spring, and in Israel and the Palestinian territories during the intifadas. And so I've gotten to see some interesting things around the world, but I also had a film festival in Connecticut, produced a concert at Madison Square Garden and Radio City Music Hall and Carnegie Hall. So it's been across the board between entertainment, politics, and trying to make it a better world.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so many different ways that people can do that. Would you talk a little bit about how you landed at the archives?
I would be glad to. A friend of mine told me that there was a job opening, and I applied thinking that I was probably too old. And we went through a series of interviews, and we really came to an agreement on what I could bring to this institution that it was looking to achieve in terms of a greater national footprint, greater financial security, and a focus on how to make it just more relevant in today's world. And that's how I ended up here. I've been here since June, so not very long. I started on day 1 of Pride Month, and interestingly enough, got an editorial published in the Miami Herald, kicking off Pride Month. So that was on June 1st. My day started on June 1st, and I've been here since then. And we have done an awful lot, running at full speed ahead. And it is an amazing organization with unlimited potential and the amazing people that can make that happen.
Great. Well, thank you. Before we started officially, you commented on my poster saying that that was one of your major exhibits was Follow the Yellow Brick Road. So would you expound on what visitors to the archives can expect to see?
Sure. That particular exhibit looks at the history of our organization, which 2023 marks our 50th year anniversary. And what it does is it traces the lineage, so to speak, of the gay community, the LGBTQ community, and The Wizard of Oz as a film, as a piece of culture and American history and our organization's history. And so we start in Kansas with things that happened before Stonewall, and those items are in black and white. And then we move to Stonewall, and what that did and how that lit a fire in the bellies of this community. And then we go to Pride, and we look at different prides, and we have Pride t-shirts and Pride posters. And then we look at what happens when you have something good and then you relax into complacency. And then we have Anita Bryant and AIDS and gays in the military, before we wake up again and are able to come away from the Wicked Witch and get back into positive things. And then we look at same-sex marriage, and we look at the lifting of the trans ban on gays serving in the military. And what was interesting there is that, as some people have said, Bill Clinton was the first Black president because of his focus. Well, the initial statement that came out of the administration with marriage was made by Vice President Biden. And then Biden, as president, lifted the trans ban on military service. So if Bill Clinton was the first Black president, then in some respects, Biden is the first LGBTQ president. And then the exhibit continues following the Yellow Brick Road all the way to the present, showing where complacency leads to problems and where activism and continued planning and activity leads to a much stronger and more stable community.
Wonderful. That sounds amazing. How do you go about getting your documents and finding everything that leads to an exhibition that sounds incredibly sweeping and important?
Well, a lot of our materials are donated. In fact, all our materials are donated. Some of them are donated without us asking. In some cases, we look for people that might be able to help. So my predecessor secured almost 900 books from Jonathan Ned Katz's library. And Jonathan Ned Katz is possibly the leading historian of the LGBTQ community. Now in his 80s, he started doing this many, many years ago when it was almost dangerous to be that out front and that open and that kind of research. And yet now we have almost 900 books, which we occasionally will display as an exhibition. We have so many different things. Martina Navratilova's tennis racket, Ellen DeGeneres' sneakers, a boot from Kinky Boots. So it stretches the horizon from sports and entertainment all the way to some of the most serious documents that keep record of our history and American history, which are the same. They're shared histories.
Yes, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit more about history, particularly because this museum is located in Florida, where the Don't Say Gay law is now in place. And Governor Ron Desantis is just one of the most dangerous anti-LGBTQ plus politicians I think we've seen ever. And would you talk a bit about the role of something like the archives, especially in a state where the politicians there are trying to erase us?
Well, I think that it's important to recognize that what we do is we not only collect the history and the culture, but we present it. And so even now, at the very end of our exhibit on Follow the Yellow Brick Road, we have a news article that talks about Don't Say Gay. And then right next to that is a picture of Ron DeSantis with the caption that says, "And pay no attention to that man behind the curtain." Because we can never be intimidated or too fearful to be willing to speak out and tell the truth about who we are. And if we do that, we are more successful in our fight, because our fight really isn't that we're special. It is that we're just like you. And not only are we just like you, but your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, your teachers, your store owners, your neighbors, your friends are part of our community. And there is no other community in the world that can claim representation at every strata of society except for the LGBTQ plus community. We cross all color barriers, all religious barriers, all economic barriers, all national origin barriers. There's no place where we don't exist.
Yeah.
And we are your family. And I think that when we stand up and we say that, and when we're not afraid of who we are and not afraid what other people think of us, we have the greatest success.
Great. Thank you for that. And in line with education in general, would you share a little bit about the Stonewall education program that you have happening?
Well, this will be the 10th anniversary of SNEP. And SNEP is unique in the sense that it looks at what makes it safe for an LGBT child to be in school. And one of the things that we have rightfully discovered is that history, real history, learning history, makes a huge difference. Because when you see the interplay between people from our community in the history of the United States, in the history of the world, it becomes so clear how integrated we all are. And when you not understand that, when you learn that in school, when it's not limited and prohibited, you start to see that people want the same things, that people have the same goals, that there really is very little difference between a boy who likes boys and a boy who likes girls, or a girl who likes girls and a girl who likes boys, or people who like both, or people who are not sure. The differences are minute in compared to the things that we share in common and the shared history that we have when we're willing to learn history in its totality and not just biographies of a select few.
Mhm. Great. You have your gala coming up, and this year's honorees are Margaret Mary G. Wilson and Xander Moritz. Would you talk a bit about their contributions and why they've been bestowed with this honor?
Sure. Margaret Mary Wilson is the executive vice president and chief medical officer at United Health, which is the largest health provider or health insurer in the United States. She is from Nigeria, a country she cannot go back to because being gay there is a death sentence or a possible death sentence. She is at the top of her field. She is a married lesbian. She is brilliant. She has over 100 peer-reviewed papers, which is almost unheard of. And she's still relatively young, breaking ceiling after ceiling after ceiling in terms of her achievements. She's also in part responsible for United Healthcare or United Health Group putting up $100 million for diversity, inclusion, and equity in the company. I mean, that's monumental. So honoring her is something that is probably long overdue, and I'm glad that we're the organization that's doing it. But she, with her experience as a doctor, can talk about any subject that concerns our community. Her experience as a Black woman makes it that she can talk about the experience of people across borders. Her experience in business is just unquestioned, being an executive vice president in such a major corporation. This is a hero. I mean, this is simply a hero who we can all learn from, who's humble enough to be in the background when she needs to be in the background and to be able to step up and communicate unbelievably articulately. So we are honored to be able to honor her. And then as far as Xander goes, Xander is a Floridian who is now a freshman at Harvard. And he gained his reputation by not only being the youngest person in the lawsuit against the Don't Say Gay bill, but when he graduated valedictorian of his high school last year, he was told that he couldn't say the word gay, that they would cut the mic. And so he talked about his curly hair, substituting that for the word gay. And he got himself an awful lot of attention.
He sure did.
All over the country and probably the world. And why we're recognizing someone who's been recognized and will continue to be recognized is because he's registering young people to vote. He is still out there creating an office in his Harvard dorm room so that people understand their responsibilities. And he's not shirking his, not for a minute, even though he has a full load of classes, even though he's young, even though he could be having a good time. He is still doing what he needs to do to make this a better place to live.
Yeah.
And that's just unbelievable in a time when our concentration, our focus is so easily taken from us because of all the things that we have. So he is definitely the role model for the future.
Absolutely. Would you talk a little bit about Tallahassee as ground zero? The march is on. There's a lot going on with the archives.
Well, Tallahassee has made itself ground zero in terms of fighting for LGBTQ rights, and there will be people going there. We will be doing what we do here in Fort Lauderdale. Many people will be going to Tallahassee. We're hoping that there'll be people from all over, but our focus is making sure that the history is recorded, that it is documented, that it is saved, that it is preserved, and that it is shared by as many people as humanly possible so that total history is learned and known. And this is the battle right now on what human rights looks like. And it's sort of ironic in a sense that we are celebrating our 50th year. SNEP, our educational program, is celebrating its 10th year. And on December 10th of this year, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights will be celebrating its 75th birthday. So when all those things come together, we know that there's an important role that Stonewall needs to play in things going forward. And we're up to the task to do that.
Right. Well, thank you for all that you're doing at the archives. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there's something else that you wanted to touch on about something coming up at the archives or any events.
Well, the big one, as you said, is the 50th anniversary gala, which is February 25th here in Fort Lauderdale. So anybody who's going to be in Fort Lauderdale, please come to that. But our museum is open, our library is open. We have 3 exhibits currently up, including Standing on the Shoulders of Heroes, which looks at 10 different people who we wouldn't be here without them. They come from all different walks of life. And surprisingly, as this exhibit was put together, it was eye-opening how many are women, how many are trans, and how many are people of color, which demonstrates how the gay liberation movement is part and parcel of the movements that came before it, the women's movement, and probably most significantly, the civil rights movement. Right. And when you look at those heroes, you see our own heroes in the Bayard Rustins, in the Larry Kramers, in the Audre Lordes, in the Marsha P. Johnsons and Sylvia Rivera's. They don't get the attention that they deserve because our history doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And that's an important thing for us to focus on. This country wasn't built by George Washington alone chopping down a cherry tree and telling his father that he could not tell a lie, which we know is a myth. So it's time to rid ourselves of myths and tell the truth about Marsha and Sylvia starting the first trans women organization protecting children on the streets. It's important to remember that Larry Kramer was the face in the fight against AIDS. It's important to remember Barbara Jordan, who took her partner for 20 years to every event in Washington, even though she couldn't necessarily come out on national television and say, I'm a lesbian, but she lived an honest life. And she was the focal point for many of us in the impeachment against Nixon. So
right. That's Representative Barbara Jordan.
Right, from Texas. And also someone with tremendous amount of firsts. The first woman to address the Democratic Convention. The first woman, I mean, just so many. It's just amazing what our history is and the people who played a role in it. And it really needs to be highlighted, not pushed to the side because it makes other people uncomfortable.
Exactly. Well, Robert Kesten, thank you very much for this conversation and for all the work that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for including us on your program, and hopefully we'll see you on February 25th here in Fort Lauderdale.
I would love that. Thank you.